Hey everyone, Jeff here. I got a haircut, so that's something. But anyway, today I've got a vinyl update to do. Lots of stuff to show, all different types of genres. Some of these were Christmas presents. Some of these are things that I bought a while ago but just didn't get a chance to listen to until now. So there's classical, there's rock, there's jazz, there's prog. It's kind of all over the place, but hopefully you guys enjoy this video. And you know, everyone in the VC hopefully is doing well. I've gotten a chance to catch up with some of you guys on Facebook, so you know, really good to stay in touch with the VC. And again, hopefully you guys enjoy this video. So first thing I want to show here is Bebop Tango Contest Live by Frank Zappa, and that's what we've got on in the background. Of all people to give me this was given to me by my grandmother as a Christmas present. So really cool. This is one of those keyhole, unofficial bootleg type things. This was originally a radio broadcast in like 1974, so around the same time as Roxy and Elsewhere, Apostrophe, all that stuff. And that's what the tracks on this album consist of. So really cool. As far as I know, this material isn't available anywhere else, or at least these performances. So really cool to get this. And sound quality is pretty great too for what it is, so very nice to get that. I've got another Zappa here that was given to me also by my grandmother, and that is Frank Zappa Meets the Mothers of Prevention. And this is one of his 80s records. It's typically pretty overlooked, but I think this is a great album. So really happy to finally have a copy of this. You know, it's a great album. It's Frank Zappa, lots of good tunes on here, and some of the songs, like Porn Wars, for example, you know, he was definitely making a statement about the PMRC and, you know, those people trying to censor music back in those days. So really you know, interesting album, very relevant album still to this day. Very cool stuff. And one more Zappa here. This was not given to me by my grandmother, but this is one that came out this year, Feeding the Monkeys, Atma Mason. And this is one of his Synclavier albums. I suppose that's how you pronounce it. But, you know, kind of like, this is like a classical album, very modern and avant-garde sounding one. And it's weird. You have to be in the right mood for this. But it's interesting, and it's cool hearing these songs for sure. And this album is also on orange vinyl, which is very cool. But yeah, this isn't a Zappa album for everybody. It's really dense and experimental, but definitely cool. I'm a Zappa collector, so very cool to get this stuff. And as far as I know, some of these tracks were never released before, and some of them never were released in this form. So very nice to get that. Next one that I want to show here is CC the Sun by Kayak. This record came out in 1973, and really, as far as I'm concerned, this was way ahead of its time. It's got a little bit of that late 70s kind of prog pop type thing going on, almost like Genesis on And Then There Were Three. So really a cool album, and if you're a fan of that type of sound, definitely track this one down. Unfortunately, this copy does have a pretty nasty scratch in it that I just didn't notice when I bought it. It only set me back like $6 or $7. Still a bummer. You know, one of the tracks is unlistenable, but other than that, really good record. Also got a copy of Oops, Wrong Planet by Utopia, Todd Rundgren. By this point, Utopia was definitely a little bit more on the pop side of things, but this is still a good record. Certainly nothing to compete with their first two, in my opinion, but still cool. Very nice to get that. Next one here is Black Sheep by Hammer, and Hammer referring to Jan Hammer. And I'm a big fan of his other stuff. I mean, of course, Mahavishnu Orchestra I love, but this is just this is a pretty lame album, if I'm being honest. I'm gonna hang on to it just because I like having all of his stuff if I can, but this is not a high point. It's just kind of straightforward rock music with no guitar and just keyboards, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but just the songwriting is kind of all over the place, not particularly memorable. But anyway, I got this for $1, so if you can find it for that, it might be worth getting. The next one here is Sides by Anthony Phillips. Anthony Phillips, of course, being the original guitar player in Genesis. And this record never gets much love. A lot of people ignore it. But there's some really good stuff on here, especially on side 2. He took a stab at some pop songs on side 1. And they're not fantastic, but they're okay. And the more progressive stuff is where Anthony Phillips really shines. So cool to get that. Box of Frogs. This is a Yardbirds offshoot, one of many. Jeff Beck actually guests on here too. And this is okay. It's 80s blues rock. Not a whole lot to say about it. Pretty par for the course, but not a bad record by any stretch. So if you see this cheap, definitely worth picking up. The next one here is Faithful by Todd Rundgren. And this is an interesting record because he does some covers here, and Beatles, Beach Boys, and they're done just totally accurate to the originals. And Todd really knows what he's doing in terms of emulating those sounds. And the originals on here are pretty good too. So very cool to get that. Next record I've got here is Eyes of the Universe by Barclay James Harvest. This came out in 1979, so this is kind of after their heyday a little bit, but still a very good record. It sounds like it came out in 1979. It has a much more slick, polished sound than some of their earlier stuff, but it's still a very good record and catchy melodies and everything. So really happy to add that to the collection. Next one here is the Garden Party 12-inch single by Marillion. I'm a huge Marillion fan, so when I see this sort of stuff, I have to get it. And it also has Margaret on the B-side, which I don't know if that was ever released anywhere else other than maybe compilations further down the road. So very cool to get that. Next one here is Gentlemen Take Polaroids by Japan. And Japan is a synth pop, art pop type group from the 80s featuring David Sylvian, whose solo work I have loved for a long time. And Richard Barbieri, I'm almost certain, plays keyboards here, and he went on to be in Porcupine Tree. He's done some great collaborations with Steve Hogarth from Marillion as well. So this is a really good album, very well composed, well produced. So really happy to add that to the collection. Now next I'm going to show some classical records here. These I got all these for $1, and they're pretty great. The first one is Leonard Bernstein conducting Beethoven's 4th and 8th symphonies. These are not usually considered Beethoven's strongest. I mean, when you talk about Beethoven, you usually talk about the odd-numbered symphonies for whatever reason, but these are great. I haven't studied them enough or listened to them enough to really say a whole lot about them, but I definitely enjoyed listening to them. So very cool to get that for only $1. Also got Beethoven Symphony No. 9, which is usually considered one of the greatest musical works of all time, period. And it's understandable why. I mean, people will criticize some things like just I guess just the overall texturing of like the Ode to Joy section and stuff. People have an issue with it, but I really, really like this, and it goes without saying that this is an incredible piece of music. So very nice to get this on Deutsche Grammophon. Another Deutsche Grammophon that I got here are Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's third and fifth violin concertos. And again, great classical music. Very, very happy to get this. And I also got Water Music by Handel. And first of all, this cover is just really, really freaking cool. And Water Music was essentially written as an outdoor piece, which I guess would have been kind of rare during the Baroque era. But cool stuff, you know, definitely sounds like a Baroque piece if you're into that sort of thing. And this is usually up there with like Messiah, I guess, is one of Handel's greatest works. So really cool to get that. And the next group of records here, and the final group of records, are all more on the jazz side of things. So the first one I've got here is Wasalu, or Wasalu, by Eternal Wind. And I looked at this originally and I just assumed it was a New Age record, which to me isn't a bad thing. But then I looked on the back, and the instrumentation includes trumpet, soprano saxophone, flute, bass clarinet, bassoon. It's lots of different stuff. And a bunch of them I haven't even heard of. Well, there's didgeridoo, I've heard of that. Bendir, djembe, dumbek, bata, kasiksi. So a bunch of stuff that I just have never heard of. And this is interesting. It's almost like, it's like a very free, experimental, very tribal, percussive type of jazz. But it never sounds mellow. There's a lot of trumpet that's, you know, very prominent in the sound. So it's an interesting record. I can't say I've heard anything like it, except for maybe like something like On the Corner by Miles Davis might be the closest comparison, although that's not even close. But anyway, interesting album. And actually, if I'm not mistaken here, yeah, Adam Rudolph, who plays a bunch of percussion and other things on here, is of Shadowfax, which is a pretty great, they were originally jazz fusion and they went on to play New Age. So, you know, there's a connection here, but interesting album. I wouldn't say it's fantastic, but if you see it cheap, definitely pick it up. Next one here is Eyes of the Heart by Keith Jarrett. This is a live record, 3 sides with Dewey Redman, Charlie Hayden, and Paul Motion. So great musicianship, lots of improvisation, really cool album on ECM, so very happy to have that. Next one here is The Hunter by Joe Sample. And I got this because it was $1 and, you know, I figured I might like it. Phil Upchurch plays a guitar solo on here, so then I was, okay, I'll get it. And this is certainly on the smoother side of jazz, maybe a little bit too smooth for my taste. But still, really good album, great playing, good production and everything. So, you know, I wouldn't say it's out of this world or anything, but definitely a solid album if you can tolerate a little bit more smooth sounding jazz. So cool to get that. The next one here is George Winston's December. And this, I guess you would say, is more on the New Age side of things. This is on Windham Hill. And, you know, just solo piano music. I listened to this either on Christmas Eve or the day before Christmas Eve, and it's perfect for that time of year, obviously given the title. But yeah, good atmospheres on this thing. You know, it's not the sort of album that I'll listen to a ton, but when the mood is right, this is definitely a good album to have. So cool to get that. And the final thing I want to show here is an upgrade copy of The Intermounting Flame by Mahavishnu Orchestra. This is a phenomenal fusion album. You know, just really, you know, pardon the pun, but this is just on fire the entire time. Just completely, you know, fast-paced, heavy, great musicianship, and Billy Cobham's drumming. You know, as a drummer, I just can't help but admire everything that he does on this record. So very nice to get an upgrade of that. And that's all I've got to show today. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that update, and I'll see you all next video.